Good morning, it's Thursday the 21st of May. I'm Marit Gwyn and this is Europe Today, your morning fix of news and analysis broadcast live from Brussels. On today's show, a drone incursion into Lithuania on Wednesday brought the capital to a standstill and forced the country's leaders to shelter in a bunker. The Commission boss, Ursula von der Leyen, has said Europe will respond with, quote, unity and strength. We'll speak to Lithuania's Defense Minister, Robertas Kaunas. And NATO foreign ministers gather in Sweden today, where US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is expected to further encourage allies to take responsibility for their own defence. The US has signalled it will reduce the capabilities it makes available to NATO as it pivots to priorities elsewhere. Also, world leaders have summoned Israeli envoys after Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir shared a video showing him taunting handcuffed activists from the Gaza-bound aid flotilla. Italy and France have described the scenes as, quote, intolerable. We'll bring you the details. But first, to our top story this morning. The Baltics have been rattled by repeated drone incursions in recent weeks, the latest being an incursion into Lithuania on Wednesday. For more on this story, I'm joined on set by our EU correspondent, Angela Skujins. Good morning, Angela. First of all, bring us up to speed on what exactly happened in Lithuania yesterday.
Good morning, Marid. So to put it bluntly, the Baltics are on high alert tenterhooks regarding, as you rightly pointed out, what exactly happened. So at 10 a.m, civilians received a text message telling them that they should seek shelter immediately with their families. The airports were ground to a halt, as well as civilian traffic. The Prime Minister and the President were also shuttled to a bunker underground, while officials above ground scrambled to try and figure out what was going on in their skies. The security incident only lasted for 1 hour. At roughly 11 a.m, the alert was lifted, and our general understanding is that a drone entered Lithuanian airspace from the border along Belarus. But it's also really important to point out that this is not a freak incident. If we can take a look at this map here, we can see that there have been at least 6 drone incursion or suspected drone incursions since the beginning of May, occurring over the skies of Latvia, Finland, Lithuania, as well as Estonia. We believe that most of these drones are Ukrainian in origin, however, have been pushed into European airspace via Moscow GPS jamming.
And given all this, Angela, what happens next and what's been the reaction from Lithuania?
Yes, so we know that the European Union have been trumpeting for at least a year that, according to national security services, that foreign agents such as Russia could be ready to attack the continent by 2030. This is why the EU have pumped a whopping 800 billion euros into beefing up the EU's defences, particularly that 3,500 kilometre border along the east. The big question here, however, is whether the EU can stay one step ahead of Moscow. We've seen that they've become incredibly creative when it comes to sowing panic, creating division within the Baltics, as well as the EU member states when it comes to supporting Ukraine. I managed to speak with the Lithuanian Defense Minister, Robertas Kaunas, this morning, and the first question I asked him was whether Moscow was successful creating the panic.
Yesterday, Lithuania experienced a drone incursion into our airspace, but our armed forces radars detected the drone's type object, let's say, before it crossed into Lithuanian airspace, so we be able to detect it earlier. NATO air police mission was activated, so 2 Portuguese fighter jets scrambled to intercept the drone. It's important to emphasize actually how crucial that NATO air police mission is in the Baltic states. And here I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all NATO countries participating in this mission. People were alerted about the need to go to the shelters, and here no panic were detected, everyone were calm. The response, I think, was timely. This is the new, actually, reality what Baltic states face. So we need to adapt because possible repeating of similar scenarios is very high. NATO Eastern Flank countries, actually facing all NATO Eastern Flank countries facing similar accidents. And NATO airspace has been violated multiple times in recent days. So we managed to react on time, correctly, but we need to increase and enhance our airspace defense.
Minister, you mentioned there that there was no panic. However, the Lithuanians that I've spoken to sound quite emotional, recounting the stories of yesterday. How are you going to reassure them that Lithuania is safe?
Lithuania is a member of NATO alliance. We have a strong commitment from our allies that we are not alone, and NATO air police mission is here. Additionally, we're investing a lot in our air defense capabilities. New radars are coming. Part of them are already in Lithuania. Interceptor drones. Air defense experts from Ukraine arriving to Lithuania to help us enhance our air defense capabilities.
But Minister, you mentioned all of this technology to repel Russian drones. They're cheap. We know this, but how confident are you that Lithuania can repel real Russian aggression when and if it comes? We're talking about tanks rolling across the border.
Our investments to our national defense needs is 5.38% of GDP. So it's the highest volume among all NATO countries. So we are doing our homeworks.
That was Lithuania's Defense Minister Robertas Kaunas there. Now, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has vowed a response following the incident. For more, I'm joined on set by our correspondent Sasha Vakulina. Good morning, Sasha. First, tell us, what can the EU actually do in response to this threat?
Well, the first thing Brussels tried to do was to reassure the Baltic states and Lithuania that the EU will stand up and respond and protect them. Let's take a look at what the President of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, had to say. She said Russia's public threats against our Baltic states are completely unacceptable. Let there be no doubt, a threat against one member state is a threat against our entire union. But Merit, these Russia's threats towards the Baltic states are not new. They're coming there for years, and it is actually enough to just follow the official Kremlin statements or even Russian state-controlled media on daily basis, threatening the Baltic states, threatening Brussels, threatening Berlin, or even London very openly. Also, at the same time, just earlier this week, Russia's foreign intelligence agency issued open threats to the Baltics under the false claims of them allegedly providing their airspace for Ukrainian drones. Now, these claims have been categorically denied by both the Baltic states and Kyiv.
And Sasha, it seems that some countries are not only more vulnerable to this, but are also more prepared than others.
Definitely. Some of them have done more of homework, so to say, specifically starting from 2022 and Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And one of these countries is Poland. Now, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said that these attacks and this incident are part of coordinated provocation by Moscow. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Ostrzegałem już wiele miesięcy temu, także kilka tygodni temu, że może nastąpić.
I have warned many months ago and also several weeks ago that the situation could escalate, not only regarding the Ukrainian-Russian war, but across the entire eastern flank. The Russian-Ukrainian war and Russia's aggressive policy towards Ukraine and its neighbors could soon lead to situations requiring a firm response.
W długim czasie do sytuacji, w których będzie trzeba reagować stanowczo.
Together with Warsaw, stock warnings were issued also by Kyiv. Early on the 15th of May, President Zelensky said that their Ukrainian foreign intelligence also has the information that Russia is effectively trying to drag Belarus more into its war against Ukraine, but also against possibly other countries like the Baltic states.
Okay, Sasha, thank you so much for that analysis. We're moving on now. The divisive legacy of former German Chancellor Angela Merkel was under the spotlight this week when she received an European Order of Merit. But what impression is the current Chancellor Friedrich Merz making 1 year after he took the reins? Our Jakobianis takes a look.
1 year into Friedrich Merz's chancellorship, the honeymoon is long gone, and much of the damage is self-inflicted. He recently chose the bold strategy of scolding Germany's workforce for taking too many sick days, dismissing part-time jobs as a lazy lifestyle choice, and even telling Germans to look to Greece to learn how to work hard. A staggering historical plot twist from a leader whose country spent years lecturing Europe on efficiency, isn't it? So what went wrong? A year ago, Merz promised a conservative pro-market renewal, but his centre-right and centre-left coalition is paralysed by internal fighting. Germany's economic recovery has completely stalled, with growth projections for this year halved to just 0.5%. And voters are furious over high energy costs, heavy taxes, an upcoming €4 billion cut to the public pension system. And internationally, a public swipe at Donald Trump over Iran backfired badly, with the US president claiming Merz doesn't know what he's talking about. And with the planned withdrawal of 5,000 US troops from Germany, vital long-term security agreements look now a bit shaky. And according to the recent survey, Merz is now the most unpopular democratically elected leader in the world. And a staggering 76% of Germans disapprove of his performance. But to be fair to Merz, his job isn't easy. His coalition holds a tiny parliamentary majority of just 12 seats, and with his CDU party dropping to just 23% in the polls, he looks more and more isolated, allowing the far-right AfD to take the lead ahead of critical state elections this autumn. Merz has always been seen as a man of business. He promised the German people he would get the economy back on track, but so far he's offering them nothing but economic tough love and longer working weeks. And if his voters do not see economic results soon, they will send Merz into retirement. And given his notorious comments about how glad he was to escape the Amazon after last year's climate summit in Brazil, it is safe to assume he won't be choosing to spend that time off in Berlin.
Jakobianis reporting there. Now, today, NATO foreign ministers are in Sweden for a 2-day meeting ahead of the Leaders' Summit in Ankara in July. On the agenda, the urgent need to ramp up the production of weapons. Also high on minds is the US decision to cut its commitment to the alliance even in wartime. Our correspondent, Shauna Murray, is here with me. Good morning, Shauna. Good to see you. First, tell us more about what the US is actually announcing and how it may impact NATO.
Indeed. So we know that over the past few weeks we heard Donald Trump saying he's removing 5,000 troops from Germany. Instead, he cut a brigade that was due to deploy to Poland. So that's not what this is. He's not removing soldiers per se from NATO territory. You still have around 70,000 or so. What this is the United States shrinking the pool of resources available to NATO during a time of war or an invasion. So essentially within NATO, we have this framework called the NATO force model that deals with deterrence and defence capabilities, particularly in times of war. The United States is saying we're taking away some of what can be activated if there was an invasion. So this is a structural and quite fundamental. Take a listen to J.D. Vance, the Vice President.
We're not talking about pulling every single American troop out of Europe. We're talking about shifting some resources around in a way that maximizes American security. I don't think that's bad for Europe. That's encouraging Europe to take more ownership. The United States cannot be the policeman of the world.
Now, he's saying that they're shifting it around, but they actually are reducing it and shrinking what can be available. But I think the point that he also made there is important, is that the European allies have stepped up in capabilities in these areas. So Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, is saying that we've engaged with the United States about this. So there won't be capability gaps per se, but it is a fundamental shift, Marit.
And at the same time, Shauna, concerns that the US has been burning through weapons stockpiles and that could potentially leave gaps for Europe?
Well, the estimation is about $1 billion a day is being spent on the war in Iran. And what's happening is the United States is, like you said, expending or burning through very highly critical munitions, including Patriot air defence missile systems, which are very expensive and very hard to produce. The knock-on effect could be that the Europeans, which are purchasing a lot of these weapons for use on the battlefield in Ukraine, that they won't be available because the production can't keep up with the pace of the usage in Iran. And as we see, the Iran war is not really shown any signs of abating. So the problem right now, right now we know the deliveries are being made to Ukraine more or less. But within the next few months, if this war continues, that won't be the case. So here at Sweden today, you'll hear from Marco Rubio, US Secretary of State, saying that the production needs to be ramped up even more. And before the war in Iran, it was pretty bad. So it could get far worse. Marid?
Okay, Shauna, we'll keep an eye out, of course, on that meeting happening in Sweden during the day. But we're moving on now. The European Union is banning nudification apps which use AI to undress individuals without their consent. Our Europe editor, Maria Tadeo, spoke to the EU's Commissioner for Tech, Henna Virkkunen, and started by asking her if she had concerns that the move could prompt criticism from the US.
When it comes to that kind of notification apps, we are banning them in the European Union. So it's part of our AI Act and trialogue negotiations. We concluded 2 weeks ago with the co-legislators that we decided that we are banning that kind of notification apps in the European Union.
Do you fear any backlash just finally on this from the US as a result of this? Keeping in mind, however, no one has consented to this.
I think that these are very common concerns globally now when technology is taking bigger role, that what kind of risks it's also posing. And many countries are looking towards Europe, that what kind of measures we are taking here, because with our Digital Services Act, with our Digital Markets Act and with our AI Act, we have really also set a global benchmark that we want that we have digital environment which is safe and fair and democratic, and we are enforcing these rules. And at the same time, we want to encourage innovations and investments in this area, but we want that people can trust those technologies.
And you can see Maria's full interview with Commissioner Virkkunen on Euronews.com. But now, several European countries have expressed outrage after Israel's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir shared a video showing him taunting activists from an aid flotilla headed for Gaza, among them European citizens. Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, has reacted. She said, "It is intolerable that these protesters, among whom there are many Italian citizens, are subjected to this treatment which violates human dignity. We demand an apology." Now, earlier this week, the Israeli government had accused the flotilla of breaching international law and of being a, quote, PR stunt at the service of Hamas. But Ben-Gvir's actions have attracted rare criticism from the Israeli government, including the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who said Israel has every right to prevent provocative flotillas of Hamas terrorist supporters from entering our territorial waters and reaching Gaza. However, the way that Minister Ben-Gvir dealt with the flotilla activists is not in line with Israel's values and norms. Well, our correspondent Vincenzo Genovese spoke to MEP Benedetta Scuderi in Strasbourg, where the European Parliament sits this week, and asked for her reaction.
We're seeing these horrible videos of the activists being beaten, being forced to be on their knees, being basically tortured, with a minister of a state that we have a lot of relationship with shouting at them. So, as Europe, we need to have a strong stand. That means that we really need to stop the association agreement with Israel according to Article 2, because there's a clear violation of human rights for Palestinians, and there's a clear violation of any kind of law and legality that is now starting to affect also European citizens, and this is unacceptable.
And that brings today's episode to an end. Thank you so much for starting your day with us here on Europe Today. And if you have tips, feedback or questions for us, do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us at europetoday@euronews.com. We'll be back again tomorrow with more news and analysis for you. See you then.